welcome to Connect the World. I'm Linda Kincaid, live from CNN's World Headquarters here in Atlanta. Well, it's 8 in the morning in California, where shock is giving way to grief for victims of America's latest mass shooting. A man opened fire at a popular food festival Sunday afternoon, killing 3 people, including this 6-year-old boy. A dozen other people were injured. Police say the gunman snuck into the festival and appeared to be firing randomly. Families were enjoying the day, had to run for their lives. The gunman was killed and now a manhunt is underway for another person who may have been with him. Well, another little boy who was near the gunman said he thought he was going to die. Heartbreaking words, considering that boy is just 7 years old. CNN's Dan Simon looks at how a day of fun turned into carnage.
What's going on? What's going on? Is there fire?
Chaos and confusion erupting at the Gilroy Garlic Festival in Northern California, with gunfire sending people into a panic.
I thought it was like a firework at first. I was like, but then I saw him like point the weapon up like this.
We just heard pop, 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 pop.
I seen everybody that was running getting shot, and so I was terrified. I was terrified.
The rampage leaving 3 people dead and at least 11 others injured. One woman telling CNN affiliate KRON her 6-year-old grandson, Stephen Romero, was one of those killed.
This is really hard. There's no words to describe, because he was such a happy kid. You know, I don't think that this is fair.
Bystanders stepping in to help some of those hurt on sidewalks and on the back of pickup trucks. Just after 5:40 p.m., police received the call.
Get a report of a shooter at the Garlic Festival. I'm in the area and it sounds like there's an active shooter in the park. People are running.
Quickly racing to the scene on the north side of the festival.
Officers were in that area and engaged the suspect in less than a minute. The suspect was shot and killed.
Authorities describing how they believe the shooter was able to avoid security.
It appears as if though they had come into the festival via the creek, which borders a parking area, and they used some sort of a tool to cut through the fence to be able to gain access.
The gunshots rang out while the band Tin Man was doing an encore on stage.
We ran to the other side of the stage, got down to the underneath it, and we waited until the police arrived.
They told us, you got to run. There's somebody in the bushes or in the field, so you got to run, get out of here, just keep going.
Police are still investigating whether someone assisted the gunman.
We have some witnesses reporting that there may have been a second suspect, but we don't know if that suspect was engaged in any shooting or whether they may have been in some sort of a support role.
Survivors of the attack say they are grateful they made it out alive.
We were lucky we didn't scream or anything, because we were that close. He would have shot us.
Well, sadly, this is familiar ground for America, as we have seen so many attacks like this before. CNN law enforcement analyst James Galliano is in New York and joins us now live. Good to have you with us, James.
Thanks for having me, Lynn.
This, of course, was a festival. There were grandparents there taking their kids out for an afternoon of fun. Police say they know who the suspect is. They think there's another one out there who they're hunting for right now. But we don't know much about the motivation. As far as you can tell, it seems like there was at least some element of planning to this attack.
Absolutely. And look, Linda, the most important thing right here for law enforcement is, was there another shooter? And if there wasn't another shooter, was there an accomplice? That means someone that provided some type of material support to the actual shooter that we know that police essentially interdicted and took down last night. So that is preeminent for law enforcement right now. We've got to absolutely find out if anybody else was involved in this conspiracy. You mentioned the planning. Yes. Here's where we are in 2019 America. We live in a great country with civil liberties, and we cherish those civil liberties. We love our open society. But these type of events have begun to proliferate. When I say type of events, soft target attacks. We've hardened things like airplanes and airports. We've hardened things like sporting venues and concert venues. Heck, we've even put armed guards now into our schools and our churches and our synagogues and our mosques. But an event like this we are undoubtedly lucky that there were police officers, armed police officers, that got to the shooter within 1 minute. We lost 3 lives, including tragically a 6-year-old, 11 others injured. But Linda, I'm here to tell you, could have been much worse.
As you say, this was a soft target, but it is uniquely an American problem. I just want to go to some statistics. Over 58,000 Americans died fighting in the 20-year Vietnam War. That same amount of people died from gun homicides in just 5 years here in the U.S. And as you say, you can do as much security as you want on certain targets, on certain places like airports. But it's festivals like this, you just can't do much to prevent this unless you tackle the gun issue.
Okay, I can see that's the third rail sometimes for Americans, and especially for law enforcement folks. But I can give you an even better example than the one that you just provided in using the Vietnam War statistics. 2 years ago, in what was then the worst mass shooting, where an individual in Las Vegas killed 50 people at a country concert, he was able to do that damage. Obviously, he had a number of rifles, and he also had bump stocks, which have now since been outlawed to some extent. But he was able to kill essentially the same amount of people that were killed in the bloodiest 2 months of the Iraq War, the Battle of Fallujah, which took place in 2005. So for a little comparative analytics here. Now look, last year, the FBI has charted 27 different mass shooting events. Mass shootings are defined as either 3 or 4 victims. It happened across 16 states. 85 people lost their lives. Yes, we have a complicated history in America. We've been around for only 243 years, which is almost a drop in the bucket when you look at Europe or obviously other places. But the Second Amendment is important, and we just need to find a way to be able to blend in the Second Amendment and not take those rights away and yet protect our school children and our Garlic Festival folks. Absolutely. And just stand by for us, James, because we do have where that festival took place at the scene of that crime. Our Sarah Seidner is standing by. I just want to get some perspective from you, Sarah. The youngest victim, as I mentioned, 6 years old, but there are, of course, other kids were there that no doubt are traumatized by what they saw.
Absolutely. We heard from a 7-year-old who talked about thinking that he was going to die. Other children who saved their brothers or sisters by putting them underneath a table to get out of the way of gunfire. These kids traumatized on a day when they were just enjoying themselves at this Gilroy Garlic Festival, which, by the way, is a quintessential part of the summer here in Northern California. Lots of folks love coming to this festival. About 100,000 people enjoy this festival, and Sunday was Family Day, so lots of children enjoying themselves until this person decided to open fire on innocents, something that happens again and again in this country. The person that did this, police have just given a little bit more detail. The suspect, according to law enforcement officials, is 19 years old. I'm not going to bother saying his name because what matters are the names of the victims. One of them, a 6-year-old little boy named Stephen Romeo. His grandmother telling us that he was a happy kid, a kid who, like any 6-year-old, enjoyed himself and enjoyed life, and now his life taken away.
Absolutely. And as you say, this happens far too often, so often that this story is not being covered every minute of the day here in the U.S. It's just one of the stories being in the mix today. We know that the U.S. firearm homicide rate is 20 times higher than the combined rate of 22 other developed countries. What are people there saying to you about this? Because so often when we see these sort of attacks, everyone sort of says, oh, we didn't think it would happen here.
Yeah, I mean, here's what's happening. What happens is that lists start going in people's heads. Where are you not safe? You're not safe at schools, middle school, elementary school, high school, college campuses. You're not safe at a concert. You're not safe now at a Gilroy Garlic Festival. These things start impacting people as they realize that even inside of a movie theater where there was a mass shooting in Colorado, that you simply can't go anywhere without having the thought that this is a possibility. And when you hear people talk about, almost every time on these scenes, you hear someone say, I didn't think it could happen here. That's happening less and less because people say, look, we saw something happen at a nightclub. We saw something happen in Las Vegas with hundreds of people shot. And now we're experiencing here. I knew it may come to my community. It is always devastating. It always changes people as they go through this. And again, especially for the children who are complete innocents, are looking around and wondering what is going on, and that fear and terror being put into their souls as very, very, very young people. This will likely affect them for their entire lives. The moment, for example, that they watched bullets flying or that they saw somebody get shot. People were standing there just sitting ducks, but in a place where you should be able to just enjoy yourself and relax. And now all this tension and this community trying to deal with the fact that this beloved, really, truly beloved festival has been marred by this shooting.
Absolutely. Sarah, good to have you there on the ground. I want to go back to James, because James, you were mentioning earlier about this balance, trying to regulate the gun industry while maintaining Second Amendment rights. This shooter was killed by police within a minute of this shooting occurring. And so often when we hear gun lobbyists argue for more gun rights, they say that a good guy with a gun can stop a bad guy with a gun. This didn't seem to happen here. Clearly, law enforcement shot him dead pretty quickly.
They did, and again, I mean, it could have been much, much worse, and that's certainly not diminishing the complex issue that it is. Yes, it is a gun issue. It's also a mental health issue. And Linda, in the United States, a 16-year-old kid just won the Fortnite contest, which was a video game contest, won $3 million. We also have a violent culture here, whether it's movies or TV or video games. I'm not suggesting that any one of those things is the reason or the catalyst, but you put them together and you have this perfect storm, which is what we're experiencing right now in the United States.
But you can't say that other developed countries don't have video games, other kids aren't spending a lot of time on screens. This problem of mass shootings is very unique to the United States.
Yeah, that's a great point. We have 330 million people. There are approximately 330 million firearms in Americans' hands. How do we change that? I mean, we can make all the different background checks we want now. We can outlaw any kind of weapons, but it just doesn't change the fact that those weapons are still out there in people's hands.
All right, James Galliano in New York, our law enforcement analyst, Sarah Seidner in Gilroy on the scene there of this latest mass shooting. Good to have you both with us. Thank you.
Thanks, Linda.
Well, last hour, US President Donald Trump spoke about the shooting. The president, again, offering prayers, but he didn't say anything about gun laws. Listen.
While families were spending time together at a local festival, a wicked murderer opened fire and killed 3 innocent citizens, including a young child. We grieve for their families, and we ask that God will comfort them with His overflowing mercy and grace. We're praying for those who are recovering right now in the hospital.
Well, you can bet that gun control will come up when the US Democratic presidential candidates square off in their second televised debate. This round will take place over 2 days in Detroit, Michigan, starting Tuesday, right here on CNN. And many of the candidates are already tweeting about that mass shooting in California. Bernie Sanders calls it sickening and says, quote, "Our corrupt political system, which is controlled by the gun lobby, has a lot of waking up to do." Joe Biden tweeted, "This violence is not normal. How many more families will have to lose a loved one before we fix our broken gun laws? We must take action, starting with real reform." Well, the candidates are also speaking out about President Donald Trump's attacks on a powerful US congressman and his predominantly black district in Baltimore. The president digging in today, slamming Elijah Cummings in new tweets. He started a firestorm over the weekend when he called Cummings' district disgusting, rat and rodent infested and filthy. Well, you may remember Mr. Trump also repeatedly used the word filthy when bashing the remarks of 4 minority congresswomen. Filthy, infested language usually associated with vermin, not human beings. Well, indeed, Mr. Trump says no human would want to live in Cummings District. While Republicans remain silent about his attacks, many Democrats aren't mincing their words.
It's unbelievable that we have a president of the United States who attacks American cities, who attacks Americans. Our job is to bring people together to improve life for all people, not to have a racist president who attacks people because they are African Americans.
This guy is the biggest identity politician that we have seen in the last 50 years, and he engages in what's known as racial priming, basically using this language and taking actions to try and get people to move into their camps by racial and ethnic identity. That's how he thinks he won in 2016, and that's how he thinks he's going to win in 2020.
This president is trying to distract people from the larger reality of this country. So he uses a racist appeal. There is a con man reality of Donald Trump. It's a classic bait and switch maneuver every time.
To be attacked by a president issuing racist tweets is beyond insulting. It is disgusting.
Well, let's bring in CNN's Athena Jones for more. She is following all the developments from Detroit this morning where that debate will take place. Athena, good to have you with us. A lot to cover, but I want to start first with the gun issue. Another mass shooting, no doubt. It will be discussed tonight, or discussed at both debates, the Democratic presidential debates. The question is, will any of these candidates offer any real solutions? Because so often after a mass shooting here in the US, we see a lot of talk, but not much action.
Hi, Linda. Well, that is the question. And we did hear from President Trump talking about thoughts and prayers. We've heard from Democrats on Twitter last night and this morning also sharing their thoughts and prayers, but talking about real action. And this is going to give Democrats a chance to talk about their plans for this tackling this crisis on the debate stage. Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, several have put out plans to tackle gun control. Some would say that Cory Booker's is among the most ambitious. He has said that we are going to give the NRA a fight they've never seen. He wants to implement a rule making it necessary to have a gun license. So you would be required to have like a driver's license or a passport. You'd be required to give fingerprints, have an interview, pass a gun safety course. Kamala Harris has put out a plan saying that she wants to give Congress 100 days to act on gun control or gun safety. If they don't, she has a plan that has several points, one of them being a near universal background check. She wants to require every gun seller who sells 5 or more guns a year to have to conduct a background check. She wants to revoke the licenses of gun dealers who don't do so. So there are some real plans that Democrats will have a chance to talk about on the debate stage a couple of nights from now. And they're going to be eager to do so because we know that gun control or gun safety is an important issue to Democratic voters. We've seen a poll conducted by CNN just in the last couple of months showing 65% of voters want to see the Democratic candidate be willing to take strict measures on gun control.
And Athena, just on the racism route, no doubt the candidates again will be weighing in on that, given the president is now going after civil rights activist Reverend Al Sharpton.
Well, that's certainly going to come up on stage a couple of nights from now as well. And you heard in that lead-in to me several of the candidates weighing in on the president's racism, they call it. We heard Pete Buttigieg saying that, look, America elected a black man, Barack Obama, president twice, and then elected a racist. And so we can expect more of that discussion on the debate stage. I think that one thing that is important to keep in mind in all of this is that, this is certainly a distraction. And if you listen to some of the president's sort of allies and advisors in recent years, we've heard them say out loud that if they believe that talking about race for the president can be good for revving up his base,